Alright, so welcome back again. So in the previous tutorial we saw how to incorporate Flask into FastAPI. So in this tutorial we're trying to build the actual app that we demoed in the previous tutorial. So what we'll be building in this simple tutorial is that we'll be trying to see how to use the two things we learned earlier on with FastAPI. So we are trying to include a simple block aspect, right, with Flask into FastAPI, and this is what we'll be building by the end, right? So if I come to this app, it's having an ML aspect in which you can paste in any movie. So let's paste in, let's say, Avengers, right, and then click on submit. So it's going to return the title, the prediction, whether it is a movie or a TV show. You see that we got it here. And I can also come back to the API session, and you can see the Swagger API in which you can see what the app is about, right? This is about using the Netflix dataset. So I can come back to this place, make it bigger, and then I can try it out. So try it out, execute. There's going to return 10 results, right? Very simple. So as you can see, this is it. So the show ID, and then the type of the movie which we use for the machine learning aspect, and then the title, right? And if I come down here, I can also work on the show ID. So I can paste in any show ID here, and it's going to return the result. I can also paste in the title and the key, right? So this is following the normal conversion. So the collections, plural, and then what it does, right? The controller. Yeah, something like that. So I come back here, let's paste in a simple movie. So let me come back and pick a movie from here. Let's pick this particular movie here, right? 719. I want to get the director, right? This particular result. So to get it, we can just pass it here. So this takes in the title of the movie and then the key that I want. So I want to get the director, and if I click on execute, it's going to return the result. As you can see, perfect, right? So let's return the result, George Michel Grau, as is the same thing we are seeing from here. Okay, so that is something very simple. Sorry for this, it was too small. That is something very simple building. If I come back again to the ML aspect here, right, I can also paste in a movie title. So let's paste in the same title that we had, try it out. This is for the machine learning aspect. I paste it here and I click on execute. It's going to predict whether it's a TV show or it's a movie. And as you can see, it has given us the prediction, right? Very cool, right? The percentage for them. So very cool. The actual original test, the prediction, and then the probability. Very simple app. Okay, I can move out from this place. If I get out from here, I can also go back to the app itself, and I can just switch to the blog session. There is nothing there for the blog session for now, right? Very simple, just to demo the concept. So let's see how to build this app from scratch. So I'll just go back again to my workspace. There's the app that is running. I'm going to close it, and then we're going to be building this app from scratch. So in case you have any question or contribution, you can put inside the comment section below. So let's move into where we are building it. Yep. So let's call it as mkdir. Let's call it as Netflix app, right? API, something like that. API app together. Yeah, it's Netflix. You're using the Netflix dataset. API app, right? Together. Okay, so let's create our stuff. So I'm going to create my file. I'm going to create an app.api file, and then let's install the things we need. So pip install. In case you don't have any of the packages we'll be using for this particular section of the app, we'll be using FastAPI. We'll also be using Flask, right? Because you're including Fast, we'll be using UVcorn, and then we'll also be using Ginger to help us render our template for the FastAPI section of the app. And then we will also be using scikit-learn, right? So scikit-learn for the model. Very simple. So these are the things we need for this particular app that you are building. Okay, perfect. So let's start writing some code. So I'm going to open it with Sublime, and we start writing some code. So the app is empty. You can also use Web Genesis to spin up it. So let's first of all let's load our packages, our core packages. So from FastAPI, import FastAPI, and then the next thing we need is we also need to import request. So these are going to help us with the app itself. Perfect, right? So this is going to help us with the app itself. And let's build a basic aspect of the app. So let's also import UVcorn. So import UVcorn. So UVcorn will help us save our app. Perfect. Let's initialize the app, which is going to be my app. You can call it an API in case you want, right, to differentiate it between the app and then the stuff. So you can call it an API, which in this case is going to be my FastAPI. Perfect, right? You can call it API so that you know this is the API part of the app, right? Then I need to close it. So if main, and then from here I'm going to call it as uvcon. So uvcon.run. I'm going to pass in API. So we are running this particular API, right? API. Perfect. And then I'm going to specify the host, which is going to be port 127, the lookup port. Then that is the host, and then the port is going to be port 8000. Perfect, right? This one can be, you can call this one as app if you want, right? But let's make it API because we are building two things at once. Okay, so this is going to be for the API section of the app. Perfect. So let's build our first route. So this is going to be our route, API route, right, or endpoint. So by default, as we already know, when you are building an API, by the convention you give your URL. So let's say this is going to be my URL. So https something something. So 127.0.0.1, right? And then the port, so port 8000. And then the conventions I just go with API, right? And then the version 1, then slash the collection or the resource, right? So in this case we are going with the titles because we are getting all the titles from the movie. So this is going to be one of our route. And we can also specify this particular route. You can also specify a limit. You don't want to be returning all the values within it, so you can specify a limit. So let's call that one as this question mark and let's limit. So limit, let's say 10. So this particular thing we have done here, this is called a path param, right? So it can be a path param, it can be a query param based on what you do. If you don't put anything here within the route, it's going to be a query param, right? Very simple. So that's one endpoint you'll be building. Another endpoint you also be building is going to be this option here. You build one for the titles, in which you can just pick a particular title and you're going to pick the key, right? Then also build another endpoint for, let's say, the show ID, right? Or let's say show ID. So show ID. So in this case, this is going to be a path param. Put in the ID here. Then another param we're going to build this for the machine learning. So if I come back here, titles can also go from here or predict, right? To predict a particular title, or can just go straight away with this option, predict. Then I'll pass in the particular movie title or theme, something like that, right? The movie title, the theme, the search term you want to search for to predict, something like that. So this is what you'll be building in this wonderful app, right? So let's see how to build this one. So let's build the first one here. You're building the first route. So to build this, just going to go with my decorator API, right? We are using API because this is called API. You can call it app, but let's call it API dot get. So API dot get, I'm going to specify the particular route. So let's make sure that this particular route is already working first before we move on, right? So I'm calling directly, then async def, then let's give it a particular, let's call that root of the app, right? Or root of the API. And now we can just return something. So return, we're going to test and see if the app is working. So let's go this test hello Netflix FastAPI, right? FastAPI, something like that. So let's check and see if the app is working. So I'll come back to my workspace, then I'm going to run this. So uvcon app. So this time it's not going to be app here, this is going to be API because this term here is what you are trying to work on, right? And the reload means that keep it running. So I can just copy this one here. Let's copy the URL which is already open. So and now we have our test here, right? Hello Netflix API. So let me position beside it. So let me position it beside it. Right, perfect. So we have built our simple one, so the app is working perfectly well. Okay, so let's work on our data set, right? So we're going to build this first route. So this works. So let me go back again and create another route. So this is going to be the route for this. And now, as I said, the comment is going to be my API slash version 1, right? The version, then slash title. That is going to be the endpoint. So this I can call it as, let's say, get titles or read titles. So read all titles, right? Perfect. Here's another endpoint you have created. So we want to be able to read all the titles and then give it a particular limit. So I'll come down here and I'll import the data itself. So you can use SQL, but we have our data set within a JSON file, so I'll be importing it. So this is going to be for our utils. So import JSON, right? And then I'm going to be opening the file, right, that we have. So I'll pick the data set and put it there. So I'll paste it. Let's call this one as data, right? So data, for data set inside there, paste in this Netflix titles data set. Then I'll come to the app itself and let's open it. So let's go as wait. Open. I think JSON to open it. I'm going to go into my data folder, then my Netflix titles.json, right? As F, right? And then now I'm going to return this one as, let's say, movie list, which is going to be my JSON dot load. So loading everything into a list. Perfect. And now I can return this particular list here when I come to this particular session. Okay, so I'll come down here. So let's take up this, and then we want to return that particular one. So let's call this one as, let's say, return, then data, then my movie list, right? But in order for it not to be so slow, right, we will be setting a limit. So I'll come down and I'll specify the particular limit I want to specify. So this is, in this case, in case I'm specifying a limit, this is going to be a query param, right? Because it's within it, it's not part of the title. So I'll pass it here. So limit, and let's give it as integer, and then let's specify a limit as 10, right? Then now I can just come down here and call it as limit. So this option to get the first 10 rows, right? So let's go back to the app, run it. Everything is working. Hopefully everything is working as expected. So it's giving us an error here because we made a mistake here. Let's go and fix it out. It's supposed to be int is equal to this particular value, right? So one thing I like about FastAPI is that if you have an error, it will never continue. That is very good, so that you don't ship bad code, right? So now everything is working. So if I go back to the API slash version 1 slash titles that we have not found, right? So it's supposed to be titles version 1. Let's see why it's not coming. It's supposed to be title. We had it here as title. Let's make it titles because that's the right way. Now if I run it again, voila, so the result is coming perfect, right? So it's working as expected. If I go back to the Swagger section of the app, so docs slash docs, we're going to be shown another endpoint. So we have the root app, which is this particular place which has nothing here. So try it out, execute. We have this simple test here, hello Netflix API, and then we also have the first endpoint, right? So so I can come down here, the default value is 10, and I can try it out and then execute. So another way you can make your app give more information is that you can add some docs within your function, then it's going to appear here. And as you can see, this is a query param, right? That's why it's showing query here. So let's see how to add some documentation to it. So let's add some documentation here using the normal doc string. So this one is return a list of movie or shows titles, right? So if I go back and I save it and let's try it again, that particular description that I gave for the function is also going to be shown here. So return a list of TV shows, right? So that is how to add some information to your endpoint, right? Very simple. The same thing here is seen here. Okay, that is how to build our first endpoint. So I can just change the value again. So come back, try it out. Let's change it from this to, let's say, 6. Execute. That's going to return just 6 results. Very nice, right? Perfect. We have finished building our first endpoint. So the next point is to add, let's say, a show ID to it, right? To show the ID. As you can see, there is a show ID here. So in case I want to show the particular ID instead of the entire title, how do I do that? So I just try that one out here. So let's see how to do that. But before we add the show ID, let's add the title rather than the show. So I can just copy this one here. Right. Instead of adding just the title, this is just the limit, right? I want to add a name to it. So the same thing, this time it's going to be this option. Then I'll just pass in the particular name. So the name of the movie, right? As we have here, the particular title we are having here. So this is going to be, let's say, title. Right? Something very simple. So I just come down to the same thing. We are using this time, this is a path param, not a query param, right? So let's call that as my path param. So I'll come down here, this is a title, and then I'll just specify that, okay, this is not going to be a limit, but now let's take off this. Because it's a path param, we are going to be specifying that particular stuff here. So let's call that as my title, right? Perfect. Then this is going to be in the format of a string. Now let's work on it. So this is returning the entire stuff, but we don't want to return the entire data. We want to return the current title selected, right? So let's use a simple option. It's going to be my item. So for item in my movie list, if that particular item is having the particular title, right, this particular title we are having here, because it's a list, then I want you to return that one. It's go to the title. Perfect. So let's change this one from title to name, right? Because I want to be able to get any of them. So this code, let's call this one as name, and let's call this one as name. So name, because all of these things are in, some of them are in lowercase, right? So name dot title. Otherwise it's going to be like this. It's going to be like title dot title, which is not good, right? So that's why I'm doing this option now. Perfect. So it's going to return that current list, and now we're going to return in the current list here. So current title. So let's refresh it. Hopefully there's no mistake within it. Everything is working as expected. If I come back here, we have our endpoints working. So we have the titles to read all titles per limit. We have the smaller title. Where is it? It's supposed to show. So let's save it. So let's change the name. Yeah, let's change the name from here. So read. This one was called read all titles. Let's call it read. Oh yeah, read a title. So this is read all titles. Just read title, or find a title, or find a movie. So as you can see, it's not working right. So the reason not working that this is a path param. I said this is a path param. It's not a query param. So query params, we don't put the particular query or particular param within the title, right? We put it inside the function here. But for path param, you must put it here. So I must define it here. So if I come back here, I'm going to define it as a particular code. Let's call it name, right? So it's going to pick this name as the function argument here, and it's going to work on it. So let's save this one. Run it again, and I'm going to see the two of them coming. That's the advantage of using both of them, right? Otherwise you'll be having the same endpoint for them. And as you can see, we have the read all titles, right, which is coming from the one where we could specify a limit, and then we also have the one for the names, in which I can paste in the name of a movie, right? So let's paste in a name of a movie. I have no idea of any movie there, so let's paste in something like a 719. I don't know whether it is part of the movie. Execute. Then it's going to search. If it's found, it's going to return the result, right? Perfect. So it has returned this particular entire result, right? Very nice. So we have built another endpoint. That is very good. Okay, so I've seen how to build some 2 endpoints. Let's add the option of being able to select. We're talking about the show ID, but we can also do the same thing, right? But what I want to do is now I want to, if the person specify the particular title, I want the person to be able to get the director or the cast or the country, right? All of these details. So for the show ID, we can also do the same thing as we did above. So let's work on the show ID. In case I want to do the show ID, it can also be the same thing. So copy this one, come down here and then repeat it. But let's not do the show ID, but in case you want, you can also do the show ID. So if I come back here, I'll just change this once, right? So now it's going to be show ID, and then this time it's going to be my show ID. So read title by show ID. I can call it get title, but let's go with this option. So show ID. Let's refresh and we can see it working. We have built one route. Now let's move on from here and build what I was talking about for the key, individual key. So in that case, this is going to be the title and this is going to be the particular key that you want. So key, right? So it's going to take this one. It's going to also take another one for the key, which is also going to be in the format of a string, right? Now to be able to do that, so this is going to search for the title, right, of that particular movie. And then in case I want to get the particular key, so current, say, title attribute or value, right? You can call it attribute. There's going to be the same thing. So we are using the same current title that we have gotten. Then you're going to get the first value dot get, then the particular key, right? So let's call this one read title details. Right, something like that. So read title details, read title by show. And now if I go back and I check it out, let's refresh it and see. I don't know whether the audio is okay. I hope the audio is okay. So we have all of them there, right? So this is the name and the key. I can paste in, let's say, the movie that we had, try it out, which was just 719, right? That is the movie we're using. Because I want to get the cast, execute, it's going to return the 719 movie together with the cast, right? Very nice. So we couldn't find it, so this is what is returning. So the reason is returning the entire stuff that we do not return the attribute. So return attribute. So let's refresh it again. And then let's go back again to the same thing we did. Let's try it out. Come down here, call it as 719. The key was now cast. Click on execute and we're going to return the result for that particular movie, right? So this is the cast for the particular data submitted. Very simple. So we have built some very simple aspect of the app. Very nice. Now let's move on from here and see how to build the prediction aspect of the app. So for the prediction aspect, we are going to be building it in 2 aspects. We're building it with the Flask and also be building it with the FastAPI. So let's see how to build the FastAPI endpoint for the prediction aspect of the app. So one thing I've noticed that, like, as you can see from here, right, it is not advisable for the user to be seeing this particular route here, right? So how do you hide this route app, right? It's not advisable. So how do you do that? So to hide it, I just come to the top of the app, to that particular route I want to hide. It, so I'm going to specify that, okay, you can see that route, but I don't want to see it inside the Swagger UI. So it's going to be include in schema. Specify that one as false. If I specify that include in schema as false and I rerun it again, this root route is no more going to be there, right? It's gone. So that is how to hide a particular route. So we only have the accessible endpoint, not the root route, by just going with include in schema. Now let's move on from here and build the machine learning aspect of the app, right? So that's going to be this particular route here. So to build it, I'm just going to go back here. Let's import the other tools. So be importing joblib, and then you also be importing OS to help us open our file. And then I'm going to open that particular file. So let's create a simple function to load our file. So let's call that particular function def load our model, right? It's going to take the model file, then we'll be opening that particular file with joblib. So it's going to be this. So let me make it simple. Yep. So I just using joblib to load that particular file. So you're opening that particular model file wherever it is, and then you're returning it, right? So this is what to be using. And now after loading it, let's come back to this place, and then let's call that's my model. So we can give it any name. So let's call that Netflix model, ML model, something like that, right? And then I'm just going to load that particular one. So let's call that's my load model. I pass is a pipeline consisting of the vectorizers together with the estimator. So I'm just going to pass in to my models folder, which I've not created. I'm going to specify the path to that particular model. So pipe lr is a logistic regression model, and CV. Let me paste that particular model here first. Come down here. I'm going to create a folder called models folder. Inside my models folder, I'm going to paste in this particular URL. So let's copy the name. The name is long, but it's a self-explanatory. Come down here, then let's paste it here. Right, perfect. Dot pickle. So this was created in the previous tutorial some time ago. So we are just, it's a simple pipeline consisting of logistic regression and then count vectorizer, and then we are trying to use the title to predict the type, and it was built on this particular day, right? That is how I name my models. Okay, so I'll come down here, and then now let's build the endpoint for the machine learning aspect. So this is going to be for machine learning aspect, so ML aspect of the app. So it's going to be my API endpoint, API.get. I'm going to pass in the endpoint for that, so API slash version 1 slash, let's call this one as ML, right, for the machine learning aspect. Then predict. That is the endpoint to make our prediction. So let's make it a query param. So we'll not be adding a title. There's going to be my async def. Let's call that, let's say predict title. Yeah, let's call that predict title. Then I'm going to pass in my particular movie. So let's call that particular one as my movie title, or I can give it any name. So let's call that movie title, or I can give it like name or title. Let's call it title. I don't want to use the like title, but let's keep it for now. Then let's return our prediction. So let's call that prediction, which is in this case going to be my Netflix prediction model dot predict. I'm going to pass in the particular prediction, which is the title, right? Perfect. I'm passing that as a string, and now I can return it. So let's return the JSON, the result. So let's go to the original term that the person supplied. It's going to be the title, and then the prediction, which is going to be the prediction option. Prediction. Perfect. So let's try it and see if it's going to work. So I'll go back again to the app, expand it, refresh it. Hopefully there was no mistake anywhere. So there's a mistake somewhere here. So that is going to be, yes, it's picking it up. Okay, perfect. So we have the ML prediction. So now I can paste in a movie. So let's paste in another movie, like let's say Avengers. Everybody knows Avengers is a movie. Avengers, execute. Voila. So it's going to predict that Avengers is a movie, right? Perfect. We also need to get the prediction probability. So how do you do that? So since it's a pipeline, you can just get the prediction probability from here. So prediction proba. Let's go to the same thing. So Netflix model dot predict proba, and I'll pass in the same thing I did. So title. Perfect. Now to be able to get the class, let's go to my details. So prediction details, which is going to be, let's create a simple dictionary which is going to pick the class and the probability, right? So we're going to be picking the particular probability here. So we'll pick this entire stuff here. Dot classes, right? And I'm going to pick the prediction probability, the first value, And now I can now return this one here. So prediction details, we can call it as probability, which in this case is going to be prediction details. Hopefully everything is working. The app is working. Let's refresh it, and then you see, so this is just the, all this thing you are building is just for the FastAPI, right? So later on we're going to be trying to see how to work with the Flask aspect of the app. Voila. So yeah, so let's try it out. So let's go with Avengers, execute. Now it was able to return a result together with the prediction. Very nice. So you have seen how to build the FastAPI section of the app. Now let's see how to add the Flask aspect of the app. So let's add the Flask aspect of it to the app, right? So to add the Flask aspect, so all of this we have done so far is for the FastAPI. So to add the Flask aspect of it, you can just come down here. So this is going to be the Flask aspect. So from Flask, import my Flask, right? You can also import render template. So render template from Flask, very simple. And then now we're going to initialize the app here. So let's initialize the app. So let's call this one as my app, right? So Flask, something very simple like this, right? So now the app here is referring to the Flask, and then API is referring to the API, right? You can make it Flask app to make it so that you know that this is totally different, but let's call it as app. But everybody knows that this one here is the Flask app, right? You can also call it as app, right? Perfect. And then I'll come down here. So everything here, this is API. Now let's come down to the Flask section of the app. Now just as it's in Flask, we just go with the app decorator app dot my get route or my route. Let's go to route, right? So app dot route, right? So you can call it Flask to keep you from confusing it, but since the API is FastAPI and the app is the Flask app, you can just come down here and I'm just going to specify that particular route. So let's give it route as the main route, right? Then def, let's call this one as my, call it as index if you want, index. Then let's return something to make sure that it's working first. So hello from Flask. In the previous tutorial I made a mistake. Perfect. So this is for the Flask session. So how does Flask remember FastAPI, or how does FastAPI see the Flask endpoint? So we need to work with the endpoint from Flask, from FastAPI. So from FastAPI.middleware, we need the middleware from FastAPI. So middleware dot WSGI middleware. Then I'm going to import my WSGI middleware, right? Perfect. So this is what's going to be using to mount our Flask app. So I'll come down to this same place. Let's do it here. Let's mount it here. API dot mount. So this place we are mounting Flask on FastAPI, right? So it's going to be my API dot mount. I'm going to pass in my route. So let's call this one as my blog, right? As we were calling it. Then this is going to be my middleware. So WSGI middleware. I'm going to pass in my API. I'm not passing the API. I'm passing in the app, right? So this can be confusing, right? So sometimes it's preferable that you call this one Flask app so that you know that this is for the Flask app, right? It's better you call it Flask app so that you know it's different. But I prefer to call it app because I know that it is Flask app. So Flask app, perfect. Now it's going to detect the changes. It's detecting the changes. Now let's go back again and see what we have done so far. So I'll just move from here. So you can see that the FastAPI session is working. Now let's check and see if the Fast app works or the Flask works. So you see, just go with blog. So this blog here is referring to my Flask mounted point here. This mounted point. If I call this one as app, I'll have to change it one and call this one as app here, right, before the route. So now if I go back and I check it out, it's going to return the result. Hopefully there is no mistakes anyway. And as you can see, it has returned a result. Hello from Flask. Right, you can see that hello from Flask has been returned. So that means that our app is working. Okay. That is how to do that, right? Now, since we have gotten one part for the Flask app, you can do whatever you want to do with the Flask app. So we can also come down to the Flask session, and then let's say we want to also add another one for the about page. So it's working. So let's return a template. So render template. I have to create a template folder and call this one as index.html, right? We can call this one as the index.html. Create another part for, let's say, the about page. So about page. So this is going to be my about page. Yeah, something like that. So let's create this particular endpoint. So I'll go back to my app, the location of where the app is. I'm going to create another folder called template. Then inside my template, I'm going to create in two files, which is going to be my index.html for the Flask point. Create another one for the about page. This is going to be my about.html. So let's simply create a simple HTML template. So let's call this my Netflix API app. Yeah, we can call it API app with FastAPI. Div. Building bootstrap later. So container. And this is going to be my h2. Let's say Flask blog for Netflix API, right? Something like that. So we want to see this one. So if I come down here, it's already being rendered here. So if I rerun it again for the blog section, I'm going to see the template that was here, right? Flask blog for Netflix API. Then let's copy the same thing for the about page. So this is going to be in the about page. So about page. So now we have seen the result. Right, so the about page is also going to work perfectly well. Perfect. That is something very cool. So that is how to, this particular approach can also be used to include templates right within your FastAPI. If it's something simple like this, you can use FastAPI to actually do the same thing here, right? So let's see how to do that. So we have seen how to add the Flask session blog to the FastAPI. This is something simple. You can add your blog code later. We don't have time for all of that. To take a lot of time. Okay. So let's see how to add Jinja template, right? So be using FastAPI to do the same thing, right? So this was the Flask session. Now let's see how to use FastAPI to do this simple stuff you have done, right? So in case I want to use this entire stuff here, it's the FastAPI. I want to add Jinja template to it. So this is for Flask session. Still, let's come down here and let's call this one, as I say, FastAPI template, right? So to be able to work with templating, right, it's FastAPI, I have to just import Jinja, which we have already imported. Then we're using Jinja template to help us with that. So I'll come down here and let's call this one, as I say, FastAPI templating. So in that case, it's going to be from FastAPI.responses import HTML response. Right, in case it's a basic stuff, you can use this particular approach, but in case you want to add a complex block, then you can just use the Flask approach. So from FastAPI.templating, you want to import Jinja template. So Jinja 2 template. Jinja is very powerful. It's used in almost all the famous Python frameworks, right? Perfect. That is all. Now you have done it. Now from here, I can just come down here and create the FastAPI template. So the first requirement, we need a location for the HTML that you want, right? So it's going to be my option. So template, can give it any name. I'm going to specify, okay, using the two template, go into my directory. I'm going to specify a particular directory. So you can also use the same, I prefer to use the same template here, right? So I'll just go back again, open that particular place, and then let's go into the same template. I'm going to create another one. I'm going to call it as my docs, right? For the FastAPI, right? And then from there, I'm going to specify this is going to be my documentation. So docs FastAPI, something like that, right? So we can just use any name, but just to make it simple, so you know that this from that. So we are going to be going into my directory called template, and then inside my template, that is where I'm going to find my docs. So template can be templates docs, right? Or it can be just templates like that. And let's come down here and then work on it. So this is going to be our location. And now to render the app, just going to be my app API, right? Dot get. So this is going to be our default. So by default, if we open the app here, let me show you something. If I come back to the default section here, it's going to return us to the, I don't know how to call it, the initial one is identifying it. This, right? This is not good. I want to put a template here, right? So that if the person comes to this direct route, the person sees the documentation for this particular app. And in case the person needs the blog, the person can go to the blog aspect of the app. So in that is why I'm trying to specify that particular route here. So just go back again. Perfect. Then I'm going to specify, okay, async def. Let's call this one as my can call it as any name you want to be. So let's call it as index. No, let's change this one from this to blog page, right? Blog page, and let's call this one as index for the main app, right? For the FastAPI. Perfect. Then I'm just going to specify that, okay, this is going to go with this option. Then I'm going to return some stuff. So I want to return whatever I want to return. Now to be able to return something, I have to just specify that, okay, this is the main route. I have to specify that, okay, you can receive HTML. So the response type class is going to be my HTML response that I imported from above. Then from there, I can now return whatever I want to return. So request. So request is important. Otherwise, without request, you can't return HTML response. So I have to import request from FastAPI here, which I've already imported. And then I'll come down to here, right? And now I can return the HTML response, right? So that will be my template. The location, okay. Then I want you to fetch the template. Right, so we have the two templates here, but what I want you to fetch is fetch the template response, and then I'll move into that place and pick the docs FastAPI.html. Then I need to specify that, okay, that is the case. I want you to be able to receive the request coming from this particular request above. Otherwise it's not going to work. So let's save it and see. So now if I come back to this route, I'm no more going to get in it. I want to get this particular render template, so I have to hide the first one, the root app, this one, right? So I can just call it as say API, perfect, so that it looks different. Now let's run it again. Hopefully there's no mistakes anyway. So now this time it's not going to render this test, it's now going to render my HTML page, right, which is this particular one I have not created. There's nothing here, so it's going to be empty. So let's paste in here. Let's call that my Netflix API, and this is going to be the documentation class container. Let's call this one as h2 docs. right? Documentation for let's say, yeah, for Netflix API, something like that, right? So now if I go back, save the backend, rerun it again, we are going to see that particular section of it. So you have seen how to build a simple app. You have seen all the different steps you have taken to be able to incorporate two different frameworks, Flask and then FastAPI together. You have seen how to use FastAPI templating to render the documentation page, so that if the person comes to the app straight away, this is going to be our main index page, right? But in case the person wants to go to the blog section of the app, the person will go to the blog, and then the person is going to see the blog, Flask blog. And in case the person wants to see the about page, right? Perfect. And in case the person also wants to go to the docs, and then now the person is redirected to the docs. But it is simple that if the person comes to this particular page here, the docs API, I can also specify that, okay, this is the docs API, I want you to be able to see the docs. So div, so let's call this as aref. Then now I can just specify, so to be able to get this particular docs page, I can copy this docs page and create as a button here. Then class, so btn, let's see, yeah, let's go as a button, and let's give it a particular name. So let's say API. So if I go back to the app itself, rerun, now let's go back to the main app. We have the API. If I click on it, now we are redirected to the Swagger section of the app. Very simple. And you can see that all the endpoints are there. Very cool, right? You can also add a search to it. So you can add the search inside the Flask aspect or the FastAPI aspect. Any of them is going to work, right? It depends upon you. So let's add this search feature to it, right? So this is going to be the main app. I want to be able to search from here. So I can just come down here to this place, the same place. I want to add a search feature to it. So I'll copy this entire stuff here, and I'm going to add a search feature. So let's call that particular route the API, right? This time I'm using API, and you can also go straight away. You can even go without the API, right? And just call it as, let's say, ML predict, right? Something like that. And this time I'm going to specify this one and call it, let's say, predict. Predict API or something, endpoint or something. Yeah, we can give it predict title. So ML predict title, something like that. Yeah, to make it easy. And now I can just pass in my model. So the model was the prediction we had. I'm going to pass in the Netflix API dot predict. Then whatever the person supplies, right? So that is going to be, let's pass in my search term, which will be working on it perfectly. So I have to be able to specify this particular request here. So search term is going to be a string, and then it's going to return that particular one here, and then I have to return it back again. So here, result is going to be the prediction, right? So I have to go back again to the main FastAPI session, this particular place, and create a simple form. So div form, we're going to take an input session, see what I did, test, then the name is going to be the search term. Perfect. And I need to also put a button there. So let's call the button submit. Then the type of the button is going to be a submit button. Submit, right? Something like simple. And now I need to specify the method, which is going to be post, and then the action. In this case, I'm going to specify the action. So the action here is this particular endpoint here, ML predict. I'll go back here. I'll just paste it here, right? Perfect. So if the person sends the result, it's going to go back here, and now I can create a line. You can just do the HTML beautification later, which is going to be my div. It's going to return the result, and I also want to also return the P for the original term. So original search term, right? Which is in this case going to be the search term. So search term. something very simple like this. Right, so let's make sure that everything is working. So I'll come down here. We're going to receive the search term from the front end, pass it here, and we're going to return the result together with the search term. Search term. So hopefully everything works. Later on, we can just add a beautification from Bootstrap to it. Perfect. See that now the app is working as expected. Right, so I can now paste in a term here. So let's call it as, let's paste in a simple term. Like, which movie is nice? Let's say Batman. Right, click on submit. So details not found because of the endpoint, so I have to fix it here. Right, perfect. So that is it. So one of the things to make sure that if the endpoint here is get, right, our form must also specify it as get, not as post, right? Otherwise it's not going to work. Perfect. So this is going to be the route or the endpoint, and this is going to be the method, and this must correspond here, right? So let's check it out. Let's pass in a movie, like, let's say, what movie should we check? Let's say Titanic, right? Titanic. Okay, so I click on it. Now Titanic's a movie. Perfect. Right, let's take in any movie. So let's say Batman. Click on submit. Batman is also a movie. Very nice. So you have seen how to build a very simple app from scratch using FastAPI and then Flask. So to recap, what we did was that we first of all saw how to work with FastAPI to build the API section of the app, which was here, right? And after building the API, we also built a simple mini blog, right, to show the concept of how to integrate Flask with FastAPI, right? So you can check the links below. So the code and the tutorial is going to be, the description is going to be in the description section below. So this is how it was. So we just imported our core packages and then our dataset, which we used to build our API and our model for the machine learning aspect, and then we defined our FastAPI and our Flask initialized app. We mounted our Flask on our FastAPI and we built the individual route. So thank you for watching. See you in the next session. Stay blessed. So apologies for the noise you're hearing behind, right? Bye. One more thing, we also have some courses in the description section in which you can learn more to support the channel.